Hey guys, Brian here with another video. And this video is going to be quite a bit different than my last, all of them I guess, because it's not really anything to do with the working holiday visa. So who knows, I might not even post it. But anyway, it's on my mind because I am in Poland right now, and I just got out of the Auschwitz museum. So figured I'd talk to you a little bit about that, why I wanted to go specifically, and just some stuff I've been thinking about. So, got out a few hours ago. Very emotional experience. I'm actually walking through Poland right now. I'm pretty close to it still. Still in Auschwitz, just not at the historic site, not at the museum area. So anyway, over the past, I'd say 6 months or so since I've been here, started listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson. And if you don't know who that is, definitely recommend looking him up. Listen to him. He's very smart. He's like a psychologist. And one of the things that he talks about a lot is this idea that a psychologist, Charles Jung had. I think he was like early 1900s. And it was about the shadow. And basically, like the parts that are inside of you that you don't want to admit to, and if you don't learn how to incorporate those into your life, they can come out in destructive ways that you don't want to happen. And one way he talks about finding this part of yourself is a fairly simple idea, but it's actually a lot harder than you'd think. Is basically imagine what would have to happen in your life for you to become a guard in Auschwitz, because as he says, the guards in Auschwitz were normal people like you and me, and something happened that caused them to do those horrible things. And I'm not going to get too much into the museum itself. I would highly recommend you go if you're out here, because traveling around Europe is really cheap anyway, so it's not going to cost you a whole lot. Poland is really cheap in general, so once you're here, I flew into Warsaw and traveled down on the train, and it took me a couple hours to get to Krakow, and then I woke up really early the next morning, and I got there because I didn't have a ticket. Super random, but I didn't have a ticket, so I had to get up super early and get there before the crowds came, so I'd be able to get in. It's free unless you want to pay for a tour. I didn't pay for a tour, I just walked around myself. Anyway, so highly recommend you guys go. I'm not going to get too much detail into the museum itself, except that you should definitely go. But so over the past few months, I've been trying to think to myself personally, like, what would have to happen for me to be a guard in Auschwitz? And it's not an easy thing to think about, and I couldn't really figure it out, because I always think to myself like, oh, I'm a good person, that would never happen to me. But what he says, Jordan says, is if you're the person that doesn't think it's going to happen and just thinks that you are a good person, it's not going to happen, then you're exactly the kind of person that would become a guard in Auschwitz. So taking that into consideration, I continued thinking about this, and haven't really come up with an answer yet still. But that was one of the reasons I wanted to go to the museum in the first place, is because instead of just taking the fact that, oh, I'm a good person to heart, I'm trying to look past that and see, am I just naive, or am I actually a good person? Or am I too weak to do anything, and that's why I'm not evil? Because one thing that separates heroes from just normal people is they have destructive powers, and they know how to use them and incorporate them into themselves to do good instead of evil. So anyway, thinking about that, and one thing that they said in the museum that kind of stuck out to me was that sorry, I know I'm kind of rambling, I'm coming up with these thoughts as I go. So anyway, one thing that they said in the museum that kind of stuck out to me was that the Nazis would shut down all schools past 4th grade because they didn't want the Polish people, because it was primarily targeting Poland at first, and then it switched to the Jews. I didn't know that. I thought it was always about the Jews. It wasn't. After about 2 years of the camps started, it switched to being about the Jews. Anyway, so they didn't want the Polish people to be educated, and it kind of stuck out to me a lot. So I was thinking about that over the last few hours after I left the museum, and what I kind of came up with was to do with the shadow. If you're educated, then you know right from wrong, and you have the ability to say no. And you can think critically to yourself and decide for yourself whether or not, think critically and decide on your own whether or not a person in power or authority is looking out for everyone's best interest or their own. And if you're not educated, then you don't really have the ability to think critically about these issues and decide on your own whether or not it's worth following or you should go against them. And so they were trying not to educate the Polish people that they were throwing into the camps, because it would be easier to get them to do whatever they were asked to do, like all of the slave labor and all this stuff that they were asked to do. It would be easier if they weren't educated, so they couldn't really think for themselves. They were trying to just break them down psychologically. And so that kind of stuck out to me as one way me, and I guess really anyone, this is more of a general shadow, not so much personal to me. And obviously there is things like personal to everyone that might be able to happen to cause them to do this thing. But there's also like a kind of more general answer too, and that's what I came up with, was if you don't continue to educate yourself and you don't ask why at every opportunity you have and think critically and decide for yourself if what is going on is right, if whoever in power is really doing what they say they're doing. Sorry, my arm's getting tired. If you don't continue to educate yourself and think critically about issues of the world and come up with answers on your own, if you just take someone else's answer at face value, then you're liable to follow instructions more than if you would think critically. So that was probably a huge factor in why these camps came about in the first place, is because people wouldn't question the authority that was given to them. And there's actually a great YouTube video, like experiment done, kind of about the same issue. And a scientist, or a guy dressed up in a lab coat, my arm's getting tired. So a scientist tells these people to press the buzzer and shock somebody that's answering questions every time they answer a question wrong. And the experiment is basically to see how long they'll shock somebody, and it gets stronger and stronger each shock. And it's not really shocking somebody. I'll post a link to the video because it's actually really interesting. The experiment was basically to see how much somebody would harm somebody else by simply following a instruction given to them by an authority figure. In this case, a scientist. So, that kind of got me thinking too. I remembered that video and then what they were saying in the museum, and it got me thinking, if you don't think critically about the world and keep asking why, and if somebody's lying to you and you don't really think about it, so you just accept what their answer is, then when somebody tells you to do something, you're going to do it, no matter what it is. And obviously, like, there's a point to that answer, but if it's gradual, which it seemed like that's kind of what it was with Auschwitz, it was like a gradual thing that started to happen, or with the Nazis in general. It like slowly started coming about, and people would listen to them and do like minor tasks that probably weren't the best, but somebody in power was telling them to do it, so they did it. And then it got a little bit worse, and a little bit worse, and a little bit worse, until finally concentration camps and death camps came about. And by then, they were in too deep. They had already said yes to everything else. It just spiraled out of control. So, not 100% sure where I was going with this, But basically what I'm saying is, or I guess that leads me to a point that I didn't think about before. When you're over here on this visa, so I'm going back to the visa now. Didn't expect this turn of events, but it is happening. So when you're over here on this visa, you're probably, I'm guessing, you're probably graduated already. And it's kind of easy to think that once you're out of school, you don't have to keep learning. Like, you'll get experience in your job, and that's really it. You don't have to keep, researching things. You don't have to keep trying to learn new things and further your knowledge about the world and think critically because you've already passed school. But you shouldn't do that. You should keep learning. Keep, something as simple as watching some educational YouTube videos, or, read a book, or anything really. There's this YouTube channel that I kind of like. It's called, I don't remember what it's called. It's something like Learn Something New Every Day. And it's this guy, and he makes it really interesting. And he teaches just the most random things, like why a helicopter, or how to land a helicopter if you run out of power. Just random stuff like that. That's interesting to learn, but you're still learning about the world and how it works, and physics or whatever he's telling you about at the time. And the videos are like 10 minutes long. So I watch that a lot. Starting to read a lot more than I used to, because I never read, so any reading is a lot more than I used to. So yeah, I would just recommend keep a desire for knowledge with you your whole life, because once you stop furthering your knowledge, you stop really thinking critically about the world, and you stop caring, and that's when stuff like the horrors of the 20th century can come about. So my advice to you is, when you're over here on this visa and after the visa, continue learning, continue reading, continue just pushing your knowledge further past the point that it was the day before. Every day, if you learn one thing new every day, and you better yourself a tiny bit every day, it's an exponential growth that's gonna make great rewards for you in the future. So that is really all I had to say to you. Is definitely recommend you going to Auschwitz. Don't forget to question authority. Obviously, authority is put in place for a reason, especially in countries like America. And our government system is set up amazing anyway, with checks and balances to constantly keep questioning each other. And then different parties that constantly keep questioning each other, Republicans and Democrats and libertarians, and everybody is there to have a conversation about what the best way to do something is. And they're all thinking critically about an issue and coming together for an answer. And it doesn't always work, obviously, because different people go through different things, but it is probably the best system that anybody's come up with so far. So, yeah, when you're over here on this visa, continue thinking critically about the world, continue learning about things, reading, watching YouTube videos, doesn't matter, podcasts. When you're going on walks, I go on walks a lot and I listen to podcasts. And yeah, I hope that was interesting. I know, well, no. So I don't think I have told you guys yet. I am actually pretty much done with this visa. I'm going home, or back to Ireland in tomorrow. So today is the 8th. I don't know when I'm going to post this, but today's the 8th. February 8th. I'm going back to Ireland on the 9th. And then I have, on the night of the 9th. And then I have all day on the 10th in Ireland. I can hang out with my friend and go to Glendalough, I hope. And then the day after, on the 11th, early afternoon, I'm getting on my plane and flying back home. So, yeah, I am kind of sad about that. I'm going to make a video talking about like what I've learned throughout the visa, my experience there, and just talking about basically like what to, I guess, along the same lines of all the videos I've been making, but just kind of summing it all up and telling you guys what I think and recommendations and stuff. Or maybe I'll make a few videos, depending on how long they are. Yeah, but I hope that was interesting for you guys. And if you have any comments or questions, let me know. And if you want me to make a video about how to get to Auschwitz, because if you are interested in this, then let me know and I can do that as well, because I have been there now. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe and like and hit the notification bell. and I will see you guys in our next video.